because I've had a chance to live them, and I've been at it for 40 years, right? I started in my 20s when nobody really cared about the Negro
And
League.
you
So I
still,
can,
looking at you, you still look like you're in your 20s. So you're going
well,
reverse.
thank, I don't know if it's that good, but I'll take it. But yeah, I just turned 65, right?
Oh yeah,
And
well you're a baby
yeah,
next to me because I'm 68, so you're a baby.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what, it's those years taught me well.
Yeah,
And so, some people ask me, you said, why are so many white people writing about Black baseball history, right? And it's a good question. And I said, when other people are writing your history, it's a form of oppression. When
there
when
you go.
when nations are conquered, the first thing that the new people do come in, the conquerors, is to rewrite the history. And so when I think of that and I see the conditions and I see who's writing the history, I say it's just letting you know that you're still an oppressed people. You still have a lot of work to do.
You read my mind because that's one of my questions. I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, you see a lot of, and I know some are well-meaning, but a lot of these folks are trying to write the history based on their own interpretation. A lot of these white historians out here are doing that with Negro League history. And it really bothers me. And I've had instances where I've been attacked online as far as, well, Greg, this is not a political issue. I said, yes, it is. There's a lot of, I've noticed a lot of these historians they'll always talk about, yeah, I wish I could have seen Satchel Paige. I wish I could have seen Josh Gibson. I wish I could have seen, Bullet Rogan, et cetera. But they don't understand the time or why there was a Negro League. They want to ignore the whole issue of segregation. They want to
Right.
ignore the racism. They don't talk about how, what these folks had to go through when they're driving through these little towns on the buses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that really has always just concerned me as I, doing my, I'm not a recent, I'm getting more and more since I'm retired over the years now. I can now do a lot more research. And I'm seeing that some of the books I've read about Negro League history, frankly, by some white authors, they've missed a lot of facts. When I go researching things online, you know, looking at things with newspapers.com or something, looking at an old Pittsburgh Courier or Indianapolis Recorder, something like that, Washington
Mm-hmm.
Afro-American, Baltimore African-American. I notice when they're talking about people, and I'll use Satchel Paige as an example, they forget the whole story. They limit their discussion to basically, I want to say, I'm a lack of a better term, like fun things, innocent things,
Mm-hmm.
and make, someone like Paige almost childlike. And I've seen
Yes.
that with others, and it really bothers me when I see that and know that there are a lot of these folks out here who consider themselves, and other people consider them experts, but they're only
Mm-hmm.
glossing at our history when it comes to Negro League baseball.
Uh, and, and and you're so right. Many of those people. Matter of fact, I try to pick up every book that's written on the Negro baseball leagues. So I'm always shopping the used bookstores. I'm always looking
Me too.
online. Trying to get a good price because if I'm gonna add it to my library, I don't want to go broke behind it. Because when I first started off, and I'm gonna go back, there was a young lady who wrote a book on the Kansas City Monarchs. Her name was Janet Bruce,
Mm-hmm.
and she came by my house. She was same age as me, so we were probably 23, 24. She was getting her writing her college dissertation on the social side of Negro League baseball.
Right.
So she had heard about me. She heard I had some photographs. I hadn't published anything, but the ball players kind of knew I was around. So she came over, and I began to question her because my she came from Missouri, and my relatives come from Missouri, and they were also Bruces, and they were in slavery, right?
Uh-huh.
So like B.K. Bruce, the United States Senator from Mississippi, first senator to serve a full term in the Senate.
Right.
That's my great uncle.
Really?
And yeah, he comes right from the area where she was. And so my
Man,
mother heard her name. So she said, ask her a few questions, which I did. So I asked her, do you know any black people? She said, I don't know any black people. Now, yet she's writing the history, a social history about black people, don't know any black people. And, she came from somewhere right in the same area that, my people had come from through
right,
slavery, right? Around Brunswick, Missouri, in that area. But she knew no black people. And that was in 1982, maybe 82, 83. And so I've had that long to think about who was writing our history. And,
right,
I have people sometimes call me and they say they want to write, some history. So I just give them, say, hey, look, I say, let me ask you a few questions. I said, where do you live? And they might say, well, I live in Washington, D.C. So I might say, well, if you take away Howard University, and I said, well, let's take away maybe uh, Clark or Spelman. I might take a few off the list. I
right.
said, how many HBCUs can you name? And
And
man,
first
the
off,
line
first
gets
they'll
very
wonder what an HBCO means, what
well,
that means.
yeah. So time I have to spell that out. When I have to spell, I really know they don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Uh, but yeah, so I've even had to spell that out, and they'll go silent. Another question I said, well, besides the Pittsburgh Courier, the Chicago Defender, um, do you have a subscription to a black newspaper, or can you name some other black newspapers? And they really can't. And
yeah,
so I said, you're not really ready to write something. And some of these people would be students writing a term like a paper for a class in college. And so, it's kind of like, well, let me put it this way. I was a musician growing up, right? And
right.
musicians would like to go sit in. The worst thing you could do is to go sit in and couldn't play.
Oh yeah. Oh man, you kidding?
You had to get yourself ready. You go down and you watch everybody. You see the songs they're playing. You go back home and learn the keys, and and then you come back ready, right?
Right,
Because they would blow you off the stage and wouldn't give you a chance to play again. But it's a lot of people who are coming into the genre of Negro League baseball, and they're not ready to be on stage. And But yet there are people giving them opportunities to be on stage,
right.
and so that's why some of the books. If matter of fact, George Giles, you played for the Kansas City Monarchs, played for the Newark Eagles and St. Louis Stars. He used to tell me, he said, you can sum up a lot of these books with one sentence. He said, it's the same cup of coffee warmed over.
I like that. It is. It definitely
Yeah, it's
is.
a lot of repeat.
A lot of repeat, a lot of it. You can just see they have not done any research or know, like you said, anyone black. And the funny thing, the funny thing, Phil, and also, by the way, listeners, I'm talking to Phil S. Dixon, the not only the Negro League historian par supreme, but just a historian in general. I mean, this man is just fascinating. But you notice, something I do, when I'm on Facebook or Twitter, and if someone is interested in Negro, they see something I post about Negro League baseball or something,
Mhm.
I like to check out their profile. I always look at their profile. And I have
Okay,
to say
okay.
this, Phil, I would say like the majority of folks I check out were making comments online about Negro League history, and it seem like they, are into us, into the history.
Mhm.
I look at their profiles, you'll see these foul things of, just negative things about affirmative action, for instance. Or they'll have all these
Mhm.
pictures of Trump or Reagan or someone on there,
I
and
think I know
everything.
what one guy that you're talking about.
There's a number of them.
I had
We're
to.
not going to name
I,
names here, but
no, no, but I have. Yeah,
and they
I
will
know
listen to
some
this
of the
show
people you're
later. I
talking
know.
about.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
always
how
like
to, how
surprise.
can you hold those views and be writing about the Negro Leagues
Right.
positively?
I mean, and also I know a lot of these folks, if they were around, I've asked some people about this who write about this, Negro Leagues. I say, well, what would you have done as far as segregation at that time, would you have been out there in the line picketing against a segregated stadium, against what's going on as far as the lack of black players playing in the white leagues? Would you do that? A lot of them won't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do anything. I don't think they would have a problem. They went to a place like, let's say, the St. Louis team was playing at Sportsman's Park in St. Louis, and there was segregated seating, as it was in there. I don't think they would have any problem with it.
No, and in many cases, their grandparents didn't either.
Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, but and those are really good points because when you think about this history, you have to tell the story,
Right,
and that's one of the reasons why when I took my 200 city tour, it was so important to me because after the tour, I never saw barnstorming the same because
right.
when I'm driving, and at least they had somebody to drive. I'm driving myself, right? And then you like I had one point where I did 12 cities in 12 days and did
Yeah,
13 speaking engagements. And what I would do is I would travel to the city in the day and speak in the evening, and then sleep at night. The next morning, get back in my car and travel. And I use the same route because I reconstruct schedules and things like that.
right.
And I think I went from Council Bluffs, Iowa. Well, I started in Council Bluffs, and then I went to Algona, Iowa, then over
Oh
to
my
Sioux
God.
Falls, South Dakota, and I think I went to Marshalltown. Well, I went to Algona during that period too. That was one of the way. Algona is where J.L. Wilkinson was from, and up in that area. So I went there, and then I went to from there. I went into North Dakota, and I went to Watertown, Bismarck, Jamestown, Minot, and then I went into Canada. But I'm speaking every night and driving during the daytime, and every city had a different PowerPoint. So I go back to the hotel and tweak my PowerPoint. I had a bunch of stuff that I bought with me, and for each city. But it was a lot of work. And
Oh yeah.
when I
And as
said,
someone, I have to say this too, Phil, as someone who
"Mhm,
lived in Iowa, lived in Nebraska, and has traveled that route, it is wild. I really admire you more by doing that because that's not easy.
oh, hey, wait a minute. When I went into Canada, because I did Regina, I did Saskatoon,
Oh my
and I did
God.
Estevan, right? And, the interesting thing is, I think I finished at it was either Saskatoon or Regina. I can't remember which one I finished at, but I was so excited because I was doing radio interviews in the car while I'm driving,
Right.
and I might be doing interview to Canada for a couple of days earlier or a couple of days later, and so I'm like on my toes, and everything went so well that I was so hyped up at the last event, which was a day event, I think in Regina. I think it was Regina. But I
Uh-huh.
drove all the way from Regina, Canada, back to my home in Belton, Missouri, nonstop,
Oh
21 hours.
man. Oh, come on.
I started I started to stop in Sioux Falls. I had a friend up there. He said, "Hey, you can crash at my house." And I said, "But hey, I'm feeling pretty good." So I said, well, when I'm going to pass your place, I said, if I get tired, I'll just, pay for a hotel. I drove all the way to Belton, Missouri
My goodness. I mean,
from Canada.
that's amazing. You're very, God, There's something else to do that. And as you're talking about this, it reminds me of a group that also what they did. I know there are a bunch of students. I think they're actually I think we're at Howard, maybe Lincoln University. They decided to do the Underground Railroad, but they walked it.
Mm,
They
they
walked it.
walk. Wow.
And this was years ago they did that. I never heard about
Oh,
what
that's
happened with
powerful
all
too.
of it. Yeah. But it's similar to what you did. I mean, that's you made yourself actually become a barnstorming Negro League player. You
I
became
tell
one.
you, it changed the way I wrote because I learned something. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. And when I started the 200 city tour, Barack Obama was president. When I ended the